Our next section is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or Lou Gehrig's disease. Now, this is not an autoimmune problem. It's not an inflammatory problem. It's not antibodies attacking anything. For a reason that has never been determined, the origin of your motor neurons, the motor neuron cellular bodies die. Only motor. Only motor. ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, is entirely a motor function problem. Sensory, intact. Bowel, intact. Bladder, intact. Cognition, intact. Sexual function, intact. Everything is intact except motor. Punto solamente, nada más, entiende? That's it. So therefore, motor only. Now, ALS, also known as motor neuron disease, is unique because it is upper motor neuron and lower motor neuron. This is a big deal because this is your diagnosis. Upper motor neuron, you are weak. No motor neurons, you're weak. No upper motor neuron, the lower reflex, the reflex arc is hyperreflexic because there's no inhibition of it. So loss of upper motor neurons results in a hyperreflexic reflex arc. Spasticity. Spasticity. Why spasticity? Because the hyperactive reflex arc results in spasticity. The hyperactive reflex arc results in spasticity. The hyperactive reflex arc results in spasticity. Spasticity. Baclofen, diazepam, tizanidine, baclofen, diazepam, tizanidine, unlax me. Spasticity, very uncomfortable. You know what it's like to be on a transatlantic flight or a transcontinental flight, stuck in the middle seat between two really fat people? Well, now imagine this for the rest of your life. That's what spasticity feels like. And you go, but I thought there were no sensory problems. That's right. You could feel every glorious sensation of your inability to move and relax your own muscles. Charming. Charming. Now, lower motor neuron means that your body's been cut like a puppet with puppet strings. And they flop around. So you become like a boneless chicken. You become like a chicken McNugget. Because you've just been cut. Like the puppet, the strings have been cut. So everything is wasting away. Wasting away again in ALSville. Listen for my lost upper motor neuron. Some people say that there's an antibody to blame, but I know it's no one's fault. So I don't know what it is that makes it wasting away in motor neuronville. But you become atrophic because it all is like a puppet who's cut. And then you go, well, what about the fasciculation? It's just my fasciculation running away with me. It's just my fasciculations. Ooh, I'm fasciculating. Fasciculating. Fasciculating means muscles are going twitchy, twitchy, twitchy. Do you know why you get fasciculations at the same time you get weakness, wasting, and atrophy? How can it be head twitchy? Huh? Huh? I bet you don't know, do you? You're ignorant. Ask me. Come here. Ask me. Ask me why you get fasciculations. I don't know either. But I know when I think about how to remember it, the fasciculations, which nobody understands why, is the muscles waving bye-bye to the lower motor neuron as it dies. That's what the fasciculation is. It's waving bye-bye to the lower motor neuron. No, we don't know what causes it. We don't know what causes it. Don't know why you get fasciculations. Interesting, isn't it? So upper and lower motor neuron, you have both wasting and hyperreflexia and spasticity. The only thing that gives a combination of both of these is ALS. That's it. It's also known as motor neuron disease. That is the diagnosis. The treatment is supportive. Now, supportive means this, is that when you get respiratory infections, we treat them. We need to be on a ventilator, we treat that because it hits your diaphragm. How do you die of ALS? You die of respiratory paralysis. How do you die of ALS? You die of respiratory paralysis and repeated infections. But your mind stays intact. What's the specific therapy? Whoop, 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 whoop. New data coming in. New data coming in. The therapy is called riluzole. And riluzole retards the progression of the destruction of the motor neurons. Riluzole retards the progression of the destruction of the motor neurons. Riluzole slows down the destruction of the motor neurons. Riluzole slows down the destruction of the motor neurons. Some of you may know the great man Stephen Hawking, a theoretical physicist, wrote A Brief History of Time. Very interesting. The guy knew that he was developing ALS when he was in graduate school. He said in his book, I specifically chose theoretical physics because I knew that as my body deteriorated, my mind could stay intact and I can work on the problems while I was still in my mind. And how do we know that all the other functions stay intact? Because he had multiple children despite his ALS and married his nurse. And had multiple children. Bowel, bladder, and sexual function stays intact. However, you lose all motor control, including the motor control that protects your airway. How do you die? You lose airway protection and you aspirate. You aspirate and you get lung infections, and that is how you die.